Welcome to Buddy Read Adventures. I'm Danielle.
And I'm Stacy, and we are two besties who live across the country from each other who love doing buddy reads together.
We're so glad you're here to join us on this adventure as we are reading our way through the Kindred's Curse saga by Penn Cole. And today's episode, we are going to be covering the third installment, Heat of the Everflame. So, spoiler warning for everything through this point in the series.
Also, we don't intend to curse or use foul language, but Danielle and I are adults, so it may slip out. This is also an adult book with adult themes, so we will be discussing those things.
Please, if you're enjoying our journey, like and subscribe to our channel for more content. All right. So, wow, this was a massive, massive book. So much happened, right? Gosh, I just remember when you got the book and you turned around with the counter and you're like, what? That's it? It was also a little bit of a different structure this time. Like it was broken up into three parts
Mhm.
and there was no epilogue from Orly or Mom's point of view. And you started this a few days before me as I was finishing up Heartless Hunter. And I remember when you messaged me and you're like, Danielle, it has parts. And I just couldn't stop laughing.
I I just was like it just felt so epic. It felt so big, and I was like, "Here we go. We have to, like, get ready for the adventure."
We did get a lot less of some of our side characters as well, specifically Henry, Sarai, Teller, and Eleanor. And so hopefully we'll get to see more of them in Burn, but it was kind of sad not to have as much of them, but I love that we got a lot more of Taryn and Alix. That was really nice. And I absolutely love, love, love the new character of Zal, who we meet in Umbros. Gosh, he was so fun.
So fun. I liked the introduction of him. I liked the second chance in. I liked this, like, tension between him and Taryn. I also like that steamy bonus chapter. What? That was incredible. Thank you, Penn Cole. So yeah, Zal's great.
My anxiety was definitely all over the place for the majority of this book. I think it was only once they got to Montios and like her chains were
Mhm.
unlocked there until she goes back to Kareel at the end of the book to finish her coronation. That was the only small section where my anxiety wasn't ratcheted up and going all over the place. And I was so thankful, Sparrow and Wild, for my Amarian emotional support blanket. This was definitely very needed, and definitely going to be helping in our wait for Burn, which release date is still TBD. But yes, my emotional support blanket came in very handy. So thank you, Sparrow and Wild. I don't know about you. I know a lot of other people have felt that DM is very frustrating in this book, and I
Mm.
do agree. But I kind of like it because it shows a flawed character. We don't want perfect people. It doesn't create tension and conflict. It just becomes a rather boring story if everyone's just perfect, whether a perfect hero or a perfect villain. And I love that. Really, no one is. I think my root cause with it is just the first half of the book, she's acting without thinking or really knowing all of the information. And it just made things so much worse. And then,
Yeah.
in the second half of the book, she really did start to learn, but she is still dealing with the consequences of the first half.
Mm.
And that was still kind of frustrating. But coming from a writer's perspective, last night as I was working on my book, I was trying to answer a question
Mm.
of like, well, how did they force these people to do this? And then I thought of an idea. I went, oh, that's bad. My reader brain was kicking in. And then my author brain went, oh, that raises the stakes. That's good. Let's do it. And so my characters are not going to be happy with me. But yes, so I definitely understand like why it happened, but I definitely also see why a lot of people can be very frustrated with DM in this book. So,
Well, and with this book, and it just hit me today as we were getting ready for this call of like, there's just so much that we experience in heat. And even Penn addresses that in the acknowledgement section. And she's like, thank you all for just being here and getting to the end and trusting this process. And there was like it took so much time for her to get through it, and then she even talked about like the editing process was really long, and there was just so much she wanted to get through. And I think it was in part because this book is a little bit different than the other books that we've experienced in terms of the journey and these new characters and these new places. And she wasn't sure kind of like how to put it all together in one book, or if it needed to be two books or what have you. And so I'm glad it is one book, and I do think the parts really help to divide some of the story. And I also think that, we do experience a lot of like DM and kind of like all of her journey and Luther's journey too, kind of by default, and what's going on in some of the surprise reveal of part of his journey. And so I think that, we as a reader, I was like, okay, I survived this section of the story. And I'm very curious, obviously, what happens in Burn, and then through a reread, how this like arc will kind of feel once it's all over. So, but yeah, it was a journey for sure.
It definitely has some epic qualities to it, like this book on its own, especially as like they're traveling throughout the various realms. It took on an epic structure and quality for sure. One question I did have as we were reading kind of through this is, would she still be challenged like this or at all after winning the challenging at the end of Glow if she weren't a woman or she weren't half mortal? Like night her half mortal status is not keep like a hidden secret like Luther's is, like the Queen of Arboros's is. So I'm wondering if those things are really what it is and if there's like a lot of bias and prejudice against those things. I mean, we even see the Fortos king go and all of Fortos be like, we've never had a queen. That's just not possible. Women can't. And how the power, the dual powers are kind of given there. I really don't think so. I think the Arboros queen can get away with it because her half mortal
Mhm.
status is hidden. And also because she probably, well, wasn't raised to be mortal. And there might have been some queens in Arboros earlier. She probably does maybe have a little bit of prejudice against her, but it's not to the same extent as Diem. Diem is also just really out there about it and has that really rebellious nature
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
standing up for what is right and not compromising, like needs to meet all objectives, won't just do like one thing. And it makes me very sad for her that I think like if these things weren't, it's because she is a woman and because of her half mortal identity that I think a lot of this is causing her trouble where it shouldn't. I think it strengthens her.
Absolutely.
When we do get about halfway through the book, when Orly said that her dad's magic was different too, I started to suspect that it was the
Mhm.
man, her dad was the man from her and Luther's shared vision. The epigraph of Spark, that first book, Orly still seems a little concerned that he's alive, even though she's like, I killed him, but she's standing at stairs calling down, Are you there? It was a little interesting too, but that's where I started to suspect that whoever this mystery man in the vision was Bio Dad.
For sure. There's something going on there. And gosh, that reveal is quite quite a reveal.
All right, I know Vance has more to play and more chaos that he needs to create because that's just what Vance is doing. But can we just unalive him already? It was just so frustrating so many times, just right on the edge. And then no, he left.
Yes, this is giving Jack Barlow energy in the worst way.
Yes. Oh, if there's one character I don't want to survive, it would be Vance. At least he lost an arm, so he's being punished.
I did, and maybe we'll get to this even more, but I did appreciate in the section where Luther could have unalived Vance. He was like, "Ugh, I have to bring you to my queen because this isn't my call. I have to let her decide, and she's gonna keep you alive, and it's gonna be so frustrating." I
Oh,
know we need a villain,
we have enough villains.
but yes, Vance is a dislike for sure.
I thought it was really interesting, and this is especially prominent and obvious at the end on Kirill with the second attempt at the coronation. Everyone is just too worried about their own small or personal independent things that they fail to see that the real need to work together to actually
Mm.
meet those individual needs on a longer term basis. And so they really do need to work together in the best interest of their solo interests. But they just are so short sighted, it seems that they're just worried about that initial thing. And I think that is such a big thing throughout the book. We see that with Remus and Remus's actions. We are seeing that with Yourcell in Umbros as she's chasing after DM and the gang as they're trying to flee Umbro so they can get back and save Luther. But yeah, I think them not working together as a group is really going to be a lot of the downfall that they all see in Vern.
And how interesting that it is sort of uh, it is sort of interesting how you have this situation where each realm is like trying to do something and yet they're still missing the mark. They're still not quite getting it. And so you're like, let's keep going.
It was also just so cool to see DM's journey of self-discovery and growth, particularly in the second half, fueled by the events of the first half. And we see this with in terms of her strategy and her rule. She still has a long way to go, but we're starting to see that. Also, it just in terms of her relationship with Luther, going from like nope, you're just I have an interest but not wanting to be committed or anything like that to like as soon as I get off this island, he's I'm making him my mate type of vibe right there at the end. So the growth was just so spectacular to see. And several of the realms, as they were going through and kind of seeing them, they really think they're being progressive, but they're all still flawed in some way. Each is doing something kind of different. Like Montios is doing kind of group rule. Arboros, she's trying to help the mortals and the guardians. We also see Sophos like, we're gonna bring the mortals in and let them study. And all of that. But it's still there's flaws in each of the systems. So that was just really interesting. And what that these things have really kind of shown me through this book is that common theme in fantasy that we as society need to ask questions and think critically. If there's an issue, we can't just let it go. Phos isn't really killing the mortals, but is, that the reason why they go and agree to these experiments is for the money because of situations that they have been put in. So they're volunteering, but they're volunteering out of a sense of duress. So it really isn't quite as progressive as Sophos and everyone there seems to think it is.
And even though they may be volunteering to be to be part of these experiments or to like even have a situation where they might, die from it, it's like still not quite great. Like it's still, even though it is their choice, it's still not great. It's still not great. So that's why I was like, this is sort of an interesting twist.
Yeah, not as bad as we thought, but still issues. One of the things that I always look for in relationships in the stories that I consume, whether it is a book, movie, TV, whatever it might be, is a couple that really helps each other be better people and grow and challenges them in a positive way. I really do see that between DM and Luther. Luther is really just accepting her as she is, which allows her to feel safe and comfortable and confident. you know, since she didn't really know Luther prior to the story, and we're seeing this from her point of view, we do kind of see that she does that for Luther as well because of what everyone else says to her. How unhappy he was. He didn't used to smile and things like that. And some things that he says, like he didn't really have hope, and now there's some hope that he has, or at least it's bigger hope, right? So I really liked that as well, just because they are pushing each other to be better people without asking them to compromise on who they are. And that is definitely something that I personally really like in the relationships that I consume in my stories.
Yes, I am loving them. I love that we get so many scenes with them, even some exciting scenes we'll talk about. And yeah, they're just really special and rooting for them hard.
Well, shall we talk about some of our favorite moments and our favorite lines from the book as like we kind of really dive into this content? I mean the book starts off I one of the my favorite quotes in that chapter really represents the theme of this series. In a world of black and white, I was trying to find my place in shades of gray. How many of us find ourselves in that situation all the time? We see like it's people think it's something is black and white, and we're like, well, it's actually a little bit more nuanced. So that was just so cool to kind of see. And I really liked that line. And Diem's realization of that, I think, is huge for her growth in
Mhm.
this book. But then, yes, Stacy also all the way back in Spark, you called Arlie is the leader of the Guardians. So go, Stacy. Reading for vibes. Your vibes actually went into theory mode and it paid off.
I will reclaim that back as a thing.
I was like, I mean, we were pretty confident at the end of Glow, but just hitting that like actual confirmation, I was like, go, Stacy.
It felt good.
But learning that Henry knew she'd be kidnapped, I was like, Henry, you just took a big L right there. Oh, dude, you better explain this. Later, I turned it into like a small L because he was like, I knew you'd live. So we can see that he does trust and have confidence in her. Her response of like, I didn't know I would, that was really heart-wrenching, but I do appreciate that he knew she would survive, that he does have that confidence in her, but he didn't see that she needed him, even though she was in love with Luther and he knew that. That kind of made me sad, but at least there was a little bit of a redemption there in terms of like, well, I knew you'd survive.
Well, I think with Henry, it's just like he isn't really showing up as a friend, even. Like, he wasn't showing up for her as a friend when she needed him. And that was just sort of like, mm. And also we get to meet Cordelia, and I just don't know what her deal is. And I want to know. Just
Yeah, I mean, she definitely like orally does not appreciate Vance's methods, but seems to be very much struggling to control him, even though they're in her territory. They're in Arboros. I mean, clearly he went off and joined Ophiuchi, so obviously I can assume they're separated because we didn't see her later on in the book when we see Vance again. With that in chapter 7, like we get Breck back, right? And he tells her to turn off the crown. Her line of, its energy felt entirely other, something that did not belong to me and would one day return to the source from which it came. That was very ominous. And,
Mhm.
is this really kind of mean that the end of the series we won't have any magic? And maybe that is where our series title comes from. This is the Kindred's curse. It's the magic. That bonded bargain she does with Sophos at the end. I mean, and then she's put in a position where she's going to lose it, even though it's not intentional. I mean, that kind of happened with Remus. It was out of his control, but he still
Right.
lost magic. So is that really going to be some foreshadowing of her really seeming to lose her magic or maybe all of magic by the end of this series? That's my question about that line. But recall from Spark for she owes him. She's gonna clearly owe it in Burn. That's not gonna go away.
Mhm.
And I'm a little nervous about it. Although Breck does seem to have some really good intentions and understanding shades of gray.
Yeah.
Whereas Henry and Vance, I think Henry's struggling to come to terms with it. Vance is just like, no, it's black and white, and I just want to tear everyone apart. But that's gonna come back. And I'm a little scared to see what that favor is gonna be, but she's going to be stuck in it. But also now that she's stuck on Kirill and maybe alive or not, we'll have to see how that plays out. But I think we're going to see this bargain and burn. There's no way we're not going to see it. But, as she's kind of getting rescued and everything by Luther, Taryn, and Alix, in chapter 9, I love when she and Taryn are having that conversation. And she's like, I really need that man to stop putting his life at risk for me. And Taryn's response is, don't hold your breath. And that just made me chuckle. It's like, yeah, no, we know it's not going to happen, and no matter what you do.
There's a lot of really good banter and exchange between all 4 of them in those, like, chapters, which I thought was really fun.
And in chapter 10, she says this great line to the Guardians: "We are not enemies." So it really is going back to what she was saying about trying to live in the gray and trying to get people to like take a step back and look at the bigger picture and really try to see the nuances of the situation. Just thought that was really poignant. And that was a good DM move and good line, but unfortunately, it fell on deaf ears because of Vance and the radicalization of so many of the Guardians. Not all of them, but so many of them. Alix, she really says, in the next chapter, DM to Alix, you cannot solve a problem you refuse to look at. And I think that's what exactly everyone is doing. They're refusing to look at the bigger problem, the bigger picture. And that's where everything is just going down the shithole and into absolute and utter chaos.
So
But
timely.
unfortunately, but I loved that he used the compass to find her. Not that it was that much of a surprise, but it was a little swoon worthy when that happened. So I was very happy for that.
And it's on your shirt.
My compass.
I just wanted to share a very funny moment at the beginning of chapter 15 because Taryn, just being Taryn, who I love so much, he was making a comment to DM about her blasphemy. And she says, "Blasphemy? Taryn, I've heard you say Luminous's tits at least 10 times." And Taryn says, "Yes, devotedly." Like it was just I laughed so hard. I loved it. And I just, like, don't know how I can, like, incorporate Luminous's tits into my everyday life. Like, I just don't know how to do it, but I need to figure it out somehow.
Your 2025 challenge: figure out a
Yes,
way to naturally insert Lumnos's tits into a conversation. Yeah, but then at the end of that chapter, chapter 15, when she's talking to Lumnos, so she's like shouting into the
Mhm.
air about being the wrong one, and maybe no one is chosen, but it's really just greedy men, who are saying
Mhm.
that to hold on to power. Think about the divine right of kings, and they're just really wanting to hold on to power. And each person has the ability to choose whether they become a villain or a hero. That was just a really interesting thought. Like, are the kindred really choosing them? I think they probably
Mhm.
are, but I think there's more to it than just that. But as they're traveling, oh my gosh, I loved meeting the other Gryverns. The Igneous King hurting Tybalt, that was so sad. Like, and then to find out that that's Sarai's love, oh my gosh, the heartbreaking. Kind of want, if Igneos survives, I kind of want Sarai to be the one that takes Igneos out for what he did.
I agree.
Do love DM's book obsession. That was so fun, especially like all of us in the book community. We love books and we're just obsessed with them. Like to the point where she had to be restrained in the Umbros market from buying all the books. Yes, her fascination and obsession is really particularly around books about mortal history, but
Mm.
it still was just really fun. And I think Penn Cole was just having fun with that.
Oh, yeah. Anytime you can, like, be like, "Yes, someone else gets it, someone else understands." It's so important. I love it. And I mentioned earlier how much I liked, the introduction of the Second Chance Inn and our introduction to Zal, but you also had the little children come in and create these, like, light flowers, and that was, like, so sweet, and then, Luther was, like, talking to them, and you could tell that Luther was specifically, like, seeking them out and wanting to invite them back to Lumnos, and, like, it was all for DM, for him too, but also as, like, something for DM to see, and I thought that that was, like, really special.
And just seeing them play with magic in that space, like
Mhm.
Zal making Taryn a little girl, that was just pure comedy intentionality. But I can just see this little girl taking on Taryn's like attitude, and
Yeah.
everyone is just staring at his crotch because he's that short to them. That that was just pure gold, and especially in the bonus chapter of Taryn and Zal, when like he's taking him to these places and they're like, "You brought a little girl." It's like, "It's not a little girl, never mind."
Yes, that was very fun because he even said he saw his reflection and he's like, "I'm God's damned adorable." Also, in chapter 25, we get a yummy scene between DM and Luther in the bathroom. And Luther says to DM, "I could look at you forever and it wouldn't be nearly enough." Take a moment, like, pause. Luther, so good. Lou, love of my life. And then later, he gives her a command, like, to widen her legs, and she does it, and then he says, "It's my girl," and I was like, Lou, Lou.
I was so excited. We were finally like breaking through this slow burn, and then he's like, "No, don't touch me." And like, I got so excited. I was like, "Wait, what?" I mean, we find out later, like, why he got stabbed with the godstones or cut with it. And I do remember that happening and then promptly forgetting about it until we find out why he doesn't want her to see him without his clothes on. But it was just like a yes and then a what? Swoon worthy until he was like, no, don't touch me. That made me sad, but understandable once we know what was going on.
And also at the end of this section, or near the end of this section, we get the quote, which is on the traditionally published version of the book, where Luther is talking about how he does desire her because DM is like questioning it. And he's like, "No, of course I desire you." And he like talks about it, and it's so juicy and delicious. And I just love the market in general. I just want to comment on that. The market is so great, and there is a book market, and I really want to go.
I know. I don't know how Mountains of Magic is planning on setting up their Everflame ball with like the vendor area, but I'm
Mm.
kind of hoping we can pretend that it's the Umbros market as we're walking through that at the event. That that's just where my mind is going. It's going to be the Umbros market, whether it's intention or not.
That's a
But
good point. I like that image.
really, like, there's this line in that chapter as well, chapter 28, that thoughts are harmless. And I was like, no, they are not. I mean,
Mhm,
let's just think about the idea of inception, right? We as humans can influence each other's thoughts and manipulate. And we can
mhm,
hurt others through their view of self, through making them feel like they have to make a decision that's not right for them. So thoughts are not harmless. We can actually really manipulate thoughts in our world. And I was just like, nope, I'm not agreeing with that line. Thoughts are insanely harmful, and they can be harmful to ourselves too, to let ourselves think them, whether they
yeah,
are harmful thoughts to ourselves or whether they are thoughts that, want to harm other people, because thoughts can lead to actions. There's just kind of that moment there, and there isn't a little bit of an acknowledgement that that's not really true. As they are going to, Yoursel's palace and Umbros, all the dragons kind of being pictured there. Oh, I just got very excited. Kind of was wondering, yes, we have Gryverns, but are dragons or were dragons a thing in this world or maybe in the Kindred's realm? Specifically, we only see them acknowledged with Umbros, but maybe are we going to see them? I would like that, but I also love my Gryverns, so I'd be okay if we don't. But it just seemed really interesting to call out that they're dragons, not Gryverns. Just later on at kind of dinner, thinks your cell is talking into Luther's mind. DM is like, the thought made me feel like a dragon watching someone touch their gold. And I was just like, oh,
mhm.
juicy. I liked that line.
Also thought it was very poignant when your cell gives the key to DM to her library and is like talking about the library and says, "Happy reading, dear. Don't forget why they banned books in the first place." And DM says, "Why is that?" And your cell says, "Because education is the most powerful weapon of them all." And I was like, "Oh, so good. Also still so relevant."
Yes. And such a common fantasy theme, too.
It's so true. Another part that made me laugh out loud, the party and DM sees like one of like because back she misconstrues finding two women in Luther's bedroom. And so one of the women is DM sees her at the party, and she's like and jealous and stuff. And she's like, Hag Face. I've decided to name her Hag Face. And I just thought that was so funny.
Which is funny because she's descended, so they're all supposed to be gorgeous, right? We then see in chapter 37 the line of satisfaction is the death of curiosity. And yeah, once we're satisfied, we stop growing, we stop learning more, we stop doing more.
Oh yeah, I felt that in my bones. And it was when like DMs like asking them about like, have you gone to the market? Have you seen all these things? And they're like, why would we leave the palace? Like, why would we leave our house? We have everything we could ever want here. And it's like, uh, like, what? Are you saying you never leave? That's bananas. And it's this idea that they're satisfied, like they don't need anything else. The other thing about this section too that DM talks about is like she's like thinking, she's like, I'm sick of my future always being just out of reach, close enough to fascinate me, terrify me, inspire me, but never enough to take a firm hold. And that was just really, really powerful.
Many of us feel like that with things. The future
Yes.
is always out of
Yes.
reach because it's the future. We're only ever in the
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
makes sense, but it's frustrating as heck.
Well, it's that idea of like, when do I get to live my life? And it's like, no, you're living your life right now. This is your life, right? Like you're not going to begin living it once you reach this certain milestone. It is like you're living it now in this moment. So it just reinforced that, which I thought was very good. Oh, in chapter 38, when DM is talking to Luther and is like finally like, we need to talk, like this is really important. I thought she was going to break up with Luther. I really thought deep in my bones that she was like, this is it. We're done. And Luther was like, no, I need to tell you. And she's like, no, let me finish. And finally she was like, no, like you're worth fighting for. We're worth fighting for. Whatever's going on, like we're going to figure it out. And I was like, oh, thank God. Like, whew, thank goodness. Okay. Talk about anxiety. I was like, she can't break up with him. This can't happen. Oh, I also just loved when she realizes that she can wield all the magic of the realms that she had been to. And Luther was like, yeah, like I had a feeling that this was going to happen for you. And we just need you to go to these other realms and then you'll be able to like wield that magic too. And he's like, you're like so powerful. I had a feeling this was going to happen for you. And I was like, oh, that's just so fun to see how she uses these different powers and we get to experience that as the reader with her. It was really fun.
Yeah, and I've always thought, I was like, she's not just a regular descendant because she's half mortal. Like we've seen half mortals kind of fall in line with traditional descended magic. At the end, we found out like she's from Omnos, like that's where her line comes from. But I'm wondering if the Omnos descended kindred, they're even more other, maybe. I don't know. I think we need more information about that.
Mm.
I was definitely right that she was not one of the normal 9 Amarian realm kindred descended.
Yeah, that reveal also, we were like, woo, what's coming next? In chapter 43, I really loved that we get back to Lily because, like, let's have a moment. Lily's so great. And she's comforting DM, and she was like, no, like, I know you were special to Luther. I would like play this game where I would like talk about something and then see how long it would take for him to bring you up in conversation, which is like such a little sibling thing to do when you know your older sibling has a crush on someone. And then she was like, I also spied on him. So I know all these things about Luther that he doesn't think I know. And she's like, what? And it was just like, I love Lily. Lily's great.
It was just such a perfect little sibling moment. I'm the oldest, but I know my younger siblings did it. Like, I know they did it.
And okay. Okay. Did you also have questions in chapter 44 when DM leaves to go to Luther's room to pray to his like bust of Lumnos, and then she looks up and there are blood tears coming down from the statue? Did that cause a pause for you as well?
No, but it confirmed in my mind that it was not the poultice that healed Taryn, but her blood. That was the confirmation. And to me, that was Lumnos saying, he needs your blood, Dim. Blood. Like that was your
Mm.
sign. So to me, that was confirmation of that. And the whole book, I'm just going, girl, girl, just like figure it out, put the pieces together. And she doesn't until
Yeah.
after the battle in the Sophos
Mhm.
capital. And she has their like perfect recall magic. And she goes through and thinks about it. And she's like, oh, it's blood. And then cuts herself and gives them the blood with the poultice to heal the injured. To me, I didn't have questions. It just kind of confirmed. And it was just like, DM, put the pieces together.
This is why theories win over vibes sometimes. Also love that in chapter 45, as we confirm that Luther is healing, um, Taryn says, "Lumnos' tits, you're alive." And I just that made me happy.
In that chapter, we also have the line of like, doubt did not dissuade me, it fueled me. And just that idea of like, when people tell you no or you can't do something, like the idea that that makes us fight even harder and work harder for something, it was like, yep, we can use doubt and negativity to really push us forward.
I also loved at the end of 45, the end of section part 2, where DM is talking to Luther about all of them, and Luther says, "You gave us something to believe in, a reason to feel like we're not alone. We were always related, but you made us family." And I thought that was beautiful.
Found family is one of my favorite tropes for sure. But then we get our one scene with Henry, and poor Henry, he does seem absolutely heartbroken over DM. And I think it might be a little bit more heartbroken at the loss of friendship as opposed to
Mm.
the loss of like a love interest. He's not handling it well. And I hope that when we see him in Burn, he will be handling it a little bit better. And I really do hope that he and DM can heal that friendship and work together. I really do hope that Henry has like an important vital part to play, but right now he is obviously heartbroken and he is not handling it well.
And also, I was not surprised, but we have the love interest of Lana, who is a little it's like hinted at earlier, but I did think it was an interesting choice to during the like scene where DM is like basically saying like our engagement is off, that there is a little bit of this like, well, maybe it will feel a little bit okay because you have this other person who clearly loves you in the way that you should be loved that I can't give you.
I think it's really important that finally in chapter 49, our characters, grow and develop and everything. She finally acknowledges her shortcomings. She does it in such a funny way that she's, the magical equivalent of a toddler with a hammer, able to do enormous damage, but only if I was willing to smash everything in sight. And I was like, yep, that pretty much describes you. But just that image was just hilarious because, her mother kept her magic
Mhm.
from her. So she has no training. She doesn't know how to use it. It's literally all or nothing. There is no nuance and subtlety with her magic that if she had training, she could use. I really did not expect Luther to be so and attracted to her power and reckless behavior with it. I mean, it does kind of make sense because he's so controlled and has so rigid with everything in his life that kind of, that opposite is really like attractive and he just can't do it himself, but he likes that in others. So it kind of makes sense in that way, but it was not something that I was expecting. Also, absolutely loved that Sarai protects Diem's happiness as well. Like Luther is
Mhm.
obviously working to protect her happiness, and they're both working to protect and save her life and her reign. But Sarai, like being so invested in who Diem that is actively fighting for her happiness, that was such a touching moment when we discovered that.
Sarai's incredible, and anytime they talk about like what they feel for each other through the bond, it's just very special.
When they finally get to Montios, Montios isn't perfect, but I think they've got the best of what's kind of out there right now. Do seem smarter than Sophos, obviously, and
Mm,
oddly enough, and more forward thinking. But I definitely wasn't expecting her to have the Montios crown at that point. I knew she had some other crown because they're earlier in the book acknowledging her crown is different, but I thought it was the Arboros crown. That was kind of surprising to me, but it also had me thinking back to the foreshadowing clues that was actually laid for us by Penn. Raimari's
mm,
flame kind of speaking to her, calling to her, and kind of helping her out as she escaped Umbros.
mm,
I was like, okay, that was clearly a sign right there. I love that even like the flame of a dead Gryvern can still help and protect its monarch. We do in chapter 61 kind of continue to see DM's hero's journey develop and grow. And we get that moment of like, I just want to run away or thinking about it, whether it's in passing or as a very serious contemplative thing to even where they run away. It's part of that hero's journey, that moment of like, I don't want to do this. I just want to run away. But it's so funny that they're just like, well, all these people would join us. So are we really running away? I was like, yeah, you're not really running away because they'd all join you. But I really do hope, kind of at the end, that we do get them on the orchard with Taryn Jr.
mhm.
and Taryn Jr.'s mate. Because, of course, Taryn would want his namesake to have a mate because it's Taryn. But I just thought that that was such a incredible moment. And I just want that for them at the end, even no matter what
I
it looks.
know. Well, it's a chance for them to dream a little bit. They need this hope, this dreaming to get them through all this turmoil.
This image to work towards something that reward at the end. Yeah. But them kind of working together to hopefully maybe get this. In chapter 61, Luther says, hopefully I've proven to you by now that whatever sword I'm working with, I can get the job done. And then she looks at his waist and goes, not yet. And I just like busted out laughing. I was like, Penn Cole, way to call out the slow burn.
It's so slow. It is so slow.
Yeah. But hey, it works.
Then we are now at the part two in chapter 70. Sophos' citizens were expected to embrace their love of curiosity, not just in their research, but in their private time. And then in the chapter, it talks about how there's these like events every quarter, whether it's music or theater or food, and they're encouraged to like interact and engaged and learn something new, and I just like love that, and that's just like a really good practice that we all need to continue to do and should be doing as well, this like experiencing new culture and other things. Also in chapter 70, we get towards the end, we get a little glimpse of Luther's POV, and so that felt like a bonus chapter within the book, and that was just really fun.
It was definitely needed to see what he was doing in that moment. We definitely did need that in the context of the story.
And then chapter 71 was the shower scene, which
The
so
longest foreplay scene ever that spanned like how many pages from the shower to the library?
loved it all. I want that shower. I love it so much. Everything is great.
Well, the slow burn's got to have some slow foreplay. So,
It was very delicious. I was very happy with it. And then we get to the library. And if Luther is not was not my book boyfriend before, he like became officially my book boyfriend with this surprise, because I was like, "Excuse me, you got her a library to herself?" Oh yeah, this was when I texted you, Danielle, because I was like, "I have to stop reading. They're happy. Everything's great. I don't I I can't keep going."
yeah, I think I had finished at this point and I was like, poor Stacy. Like, what's coming? Oh God. But yeah, it's that point in any book where you're like, especially like a fantasy series that's not complete yet. Oh God. They're too happy. Shit's about to hit the fan.
There are chapters left. Oh no.
At the end, like, not Perth, like, that made me so sad, but, like, I think he understood why Teller dropped him, why that was the right choice, and I don't think he regretted it for a moment. Oh, that was heart-wrenching. I just was like, "No!" Like, I think I actually audibly screamed "no" in that moment, and oh, I freaking hate the Igneos King. Did not like him earlier in the book either when they were in Igneos,
Yeah.
but this, oh, even more. I really hope he doesn't make it out of this series alive, but I think he's definitely making it off the island alive. I'm just wondering how.
Yeah.
So obviously he's a crown, so he can be on the island, but her blood
Mhm, mhm.
when he stabbed her probably just healed him unknowingly. And even if it doesn't, like it didn't get into the
Right.
wound or something, he's going to go off to Sophos. But then does Sophos still have enough of her blood? Did they know it was her blood, like type of a thing? That was the cure. So
Mm.
unfortunately, dude probably is still living. I do hope Sarai gets her vengeance on him. Oh my freaking golly, what an ending that was. I was just like, what? Brain
We
processing.
we both had intense reaction videos to that ending.
And Penn Cole responded, like, commented on mine. She's like, oops, and a little devil emoji. I was like, so good, so good. It'll be fine. There's a whole nother book left, so she has to live. Some questions that I still have that Byrne just needs to answer. One of the questions that I've been for a while, obviously, like Luther always keeps touching his heart in that vision, kind of do it to each other outside of the vision as well. But Luther's scar is
Mhm.
around his heart, and it seemed to protect his heart from the Godstone poison, right? So clearly there's some sort of protection, and I'm wondering if that protection was from Lumnos or maybe. I'm not quite so thrilled or set on this, but could it have been his father? That in doing what he did, right? Because your magic can't hurt the ones you love. Well, yes, it hurt him, but, or it's very difficult to, but he kind of got in the way of that magic getting thrashed out. So maybe he did somehow manage to protect Luther's heart. So I'm wondering how this is also going to come into play later because it's a lot of like foreshadowing moments of his heart really being protected. And that's obviously going to come into some big important moment for us later. As I mentioned, I really do hope they have that orchard with Taryn Jr. and Taryn Jr.'s mate. I really need this. I am manifesting this into existence. Oh, I was also kind of just really like, no, and at the end just thinking like, is Ophiuchi, her bio dad, going to get some of these crowns as well? And that's a very terrifying thought for me. Thought he was going to get the Umbros crown. I really did. Because the way your cell keeps talking about it, and then it didn't sound like she was talking about Diem, and I think she was using he pronouns when talking about her heir. Then Diem got it. So, but also it could be like foreshadowing, like Diem like and being at war with herself maybe to some extent. I don't know, but I really thought her father, Ophiuchi, was going to get the Umbros crown and then he didn't. She did. So I'm really interested to see is he going to get some crowns? And that is a terrifying thought.
Yes, that would be terrifying, and I was also confused by DM getting Umbrose's crown.
Yeah. I mean, happy about it, but scary. I'm also wondering is Luther going to have to team up with Ophiuchi to save her? And that is kind of like scary to some extent because
Mhm.
Ophiuchi does want her, need her for something. That's kind of pretty evident. And we know she's not dead because there's another book. But how does she survive? I'm guessing it's the same way Ophiuchi did the Godstone to the heart from Orally, but he didn't seem to be on the island at the end of Spark when like calling down the stairs. And so is he just hiding somewhere else or has he left the island? But we don't really hear any
Mhm.
rumblings of some person doing something seriously until Glow. So maybe he was still trapped on the island in Glow and wasn't released until she broke the Heartstone when her blood dripped on it from the coronation rite. But he might have just been in hiding. But is she going to survive the same way he kind of survived? Did his blood release kind of the magic? Because obviously their blood is got something to do with Godstone. So I'm guessing like it's gonna blow up the Godstone or break, it in her chest. But her magic is fleeing from it, or part her kindred magic, other than the Omnos magic, does seem to like flee from it. It seems like the Omnos, like gray magic, does tend to destroy Godstone because mom really only knew Ophiuchi on the island, and you're not supposed to have magic on the island. But she's like, his magic was different too. So did he have some magic and she saw it, or did he just tell her? So is DM going to have some magic on this island? That kind of brought up to me a very so yeah, I'm really interested to see what is going to happen with that because there's a lot obviously we don't know about Fiakai, but there's definitely some clues that there's something more that we just haven't seen play out yet. It's also a little scary, like as the Sophos King and Diem were heading back off to Kareel, and Luther was like, told, no, you can't come, you have to stay. And then he looks at his palm from the dock and he does not have a good expression on his face. I'm like, what did he see on his palm? Like, that was a big question that I had. Obviously, it got him to come to Kareel and call Sarai, which totally awesome that he could call Sarai. So I need to know what he saw on his palm and how he managed to call
Mhm.
Sarai. And then, like, just in general, what is this Kindred's curse? It is the title of the series, so we cannot
Mhm.
ignore it. Is it that mortals
Yeah.
have magic? AKA the Descendant? Is it that they created the division of the realms, created division between
Mm.
people, and not only division between, Descendant and mortals, but even between at least the different Descended? So is that it? Is it really kind of the curse of the realms erasing history, the Kindred
Mm.
even erasing the Omnos history? And so really interesting to see what is this Kindred's curse that needs to, I'm assuming, be broken when we get there. But we also need to know more about the Everflame and like what is this and how does this play into it? Is the Everflame, yes, the Guardians and the Mortals cling to it, but is that part of what Omnos is? And that power, I
Mm.
don't know. Are they connected? Are they not? But then I also have a feeling that Aemon might end up helping DM Luther and them and kind of breaking
Mhm.
from Remus and his dad. And I think it might be for Taryn.
Yeah.
Like, I really think he might do it for Taryn.
Mm.
Like, step up, be the older brother, and stop his
Yeah.
dad from hurting him and hurting other people. Like, he's finally going to, because we see that he's clearly traumatized and been hurt, and part of who he is shaped by that. Each book so far has been another 200 pages. So this was 800 pages. So I'm wondering if we're gonna see Burn as like 1,000 plus pages. But we have a lot of
Let's
questions to,
go. Let's go.
but we still have so many questions that we need answered. I'm not going to complain about it, but dang, is it going
No.
to be a big book? Obviously, we have to see that vision that she and Luther have been seeing since book one come to
Mhm.
fruition
Yeah.
too. But I also hope we visit the two realms that we have not yet visited, Miros and Phanos.
Mhm.
So we have not technically visited those two. We did technically visit Omnos with the Forgotten Lands when she went and first
Mm.
saw Ophiuchi. So technically we've been to 8 of the 10 or 7 of the 9 realms. So I really do hope we visit Miros and Phanos.
I also had a question, maybe to go back to the Everflame for just a moment. And I was thinking about in the Sophos library, there's like this moment where DM places her hand on like the tree and the tree like talks to her. And I was like, I couldn't remember if it was like connected to the Everflame or not, but I was like, what is this about? And then Luther tries to touch it and nothing happens. So I just was like, what does this mean for DM? And I just wanted more information on that front. So that is a question that I have.
Wasn't there something in the Umbros library too with the Everflame that she kind
Yes.
of so yeah, there's definitely some call outs there that it's more,
Mhm.
but we really haven't seen it. I mean, the Guardians keep they use that, right?
I also just want a way for Lily and Teller to be together. So I
Yeah.
don't know what that means, but I want that.
Everyone, if you haven't, you need to read Penn Cole's acknowledgments in this book. Please go read them. If you have not, we are about to address them.
Highly highly recommend reading them. I cackled, literally cackled. So imagine this, you've read the end of the book. You're in that world. You read Luther's bonus chapter and you're like, "Okay." And then you get to the acknowledgments, which I always think the acknowledgments are fun in general. And then Penn Cole talks about like, thank you for making it this far. I wasn't really sure how this book was going to go, right? I talked about that earlier. And then Penn, being being I think a little funny, she basically calls out that like this book is all about DM's journey, right? So important about this book to her. And then at the end of this little section of the acknowledgement, she says, "It's too bad about the Godstone blade to her heart, right? R.I.P. R.I.P. Pen. R.I.P. No."
Oh, Penn Cole likes to play us. She does.
Pen.
Play with our emotions. But at the very, very end of the acknowledgments, she does kind of offer us a glimmer of hope. To anyone reading this, when it seems like the world wants to crush your spirit, and burn you alive, never forget, my little flames, pressure and heat make diamonds. So, Phoenix, reborn from the ashes, right? That I think is just going to be such a big thing that we will see in Burn. And I think, yeah, she's toying with us, but then giving us a little bit of that hope with her acknowledgments. Such an incredible read, the journey and the
Yes.
anxiety, but now we have to patiently wait for Burn.
And we will wait patiently. We will wait patiently. We understand it's a process. We Because it will be worth the wait. However long it is, we know that it will be worth the wait. Also, just wanted to shout out Penn Cole because she's so interactive on social. She's been so sweet to both of us as we've been like sharing our reaction videos and talking about like our merch and just like everything. And I just like wanted to acknowledge her and how great she is. We are also excited because, as we mentioned earlier, Danielle and I are going to be at Mountains and Magic Everflame Ball in August. So that is just really, really fun. We're looking forward to that. We're looking forward to seeing Penn Cole there and Fantasy Fangirls. And Fantasy Fangirls is going to have their deep dive predicted to start in May.
So exciting. So much fun stuff to look forward to. So we are going to have one more video now, kind of setting us up for Burn. So the first 3 chapters of Burn, the preview chapters, Penn Cole has put on her website. And by signing up for her newsletter, you can get access to those. So we will be covering that in the next couple of weeks for getting ready for Burn. So go to Penn Cole's website if you haven't and get those preview chapters for Burn. So please don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel and follow us for more as we kind of continue on with our last episode of Kindred's Curse Saga until we have Burn out. Next episode, we'll also announce our next read, which we're really excited for.
Thank you so much for listening.